This is the Lectric XP4 750 watt edition. Now this is Lectric's latest upgrade to their kind of cult classic XP series that since they launched has actually been the best selling e-bike in the United States, which frankly blows a lot of people away, but they have sold literally over 400,000 of the XP bikes. And so when I heard they were launching the XP4, I kind of wanted to see if Lectric could take that cult classic that's known for being a folding bike, being a very utilitarian bike, and being an affordable bike, right? I wanted to see if they could, again, sprinkle some of that magic and make it a higher performing bike, but keep it in the same price range. With all the craziness that's going around on the tariffs and pricing in the e-bike world, that's kind of a pretty tall expectation. So did they do it? Stay tuned, let's find out. Okay, so last week I actually went down to Arizona to the south rim of the Grand Canyon for the launch, the official launch of the XP4. And when Lectric reached out and told us they had a new bike coming, I was actually a little bit worried, right? Because I knew it was the XP, it was an RV campground, south rim of the Grand Canyon. It's just, I knew they were gonna do the new XP. And I was a little bit worried because, you know, as I mentioned, Lectric, the XP has been known for being a sub $1,000 bike. I mean, that's the primary selling point of this bike. It's still very utilitarian, but with everything going around in the bike world, I was like, this is kind of a hard time for a company that's known for being inexpensive, I won't say cheap, but inexpensive, to launch a bike. Now, Lectric does not manufacture the frames and a lot of the parts of the bike in China, but as they moved to Cambodia over the last 2 years, and so while they haven't been hit with the 100+ % tariffs on their bikes, they have been hit by that 10% tariff on Cambodia, plus a lot of kind of a general uncertainty in the e-bike world, right? And whereas I was really hoping the XP4 was a bike that improved the performance, improved the specs versus the old models, that's a really tall order to ask of Levi, to ask of Robbie. Even though every launch event that Lectric has, I mean, they invite everybody down. Levi's like almost a cult leader with how good and charismatic he is. And even though I know going into it that that's what I'm gonna get, they somehow still like kind of surprise me, right? And so I just didn't have very good expectations on the XP4, which again is their best selling bike. So with that, we went down to the Grand Canyon and they unveiled the bike. And to be honest, they kind of surpassed my expectations. So before we dive into all the specs and do all the deep dive with the ride quality, mechanics take, etc., I'm gonna send you back in time to a week ago version of me at the south rim of the Grand Canyon, where after riding the bike for a couple hours, I just sat down and gave you my first impressions on that bike. So let's go there and then we'll come back and we'll dive into the specs. Happy Earth Day 2025. Now I know you're not watching this on Earth Day. The launch date of this bike is May 6th, but we are here. Lectric invited us to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Just look at that view. I mean, I don't think you get a better place to review a bike and to be able to celebrate Earth Day here. It's awesome. So Lectric invited us to a special event for the launch of the XP4. And while we are going to be taking this bike back and doing our full testing and going super depth, I wanted to do, because we're here in front of this beautiful backdrop, wanted to just do a segment on my first take, my first impressions, because when we got invited to this event, to be honest, I was a little bit nervous. The Lectric XP1, 2, and 3, while it's been the best-selling e-bike in America, it's always that bike when I'm talking to someone who's not familiar with e-bikes, that might be more of a traditional cyclist, they look at it and they just step back and go, that's the best-selling bike? And they just almost don't believe it. And then over time, it kind of grows on you. It's very utilitarian, you know, kind of has like an 80s retro vibe, and it just kind of becomes cool. But I was really hoping Lectric would do something different with the look and the feel. And nervous that they weren't because it's been so successful, but when they rolled out the bikes and I saw this, I was very happy, because this is what I would say a folding bike like this should look like. Again, the backdrop definitely makes it look even better, but I'm a really big fan. There's a high step and a low step version. This is the low step, and you can see everything, just the geometry on the bike. Lectric has really gone in, they've tried to improve every inch of this bike while keeping the price still have an option that's under $1,000. Now, biggest improvements, first impressions. First of all, the past XPs. When you'd ride them around, you kind of got this feeling where your arms were just very far out and the reach was a little bit too long. They actually decreased that reach, so now when you're riding, that reach comes in a little bit, feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more comfortable and more maneuverable, which I think is going to be a very big hit, especially for the older riders that haven't ridden in a while. It just makes it a little better fit. The frame, again, I've talked about the looks, but it's not just the looks. The frame feels stiffer. It feels better on the road. And again, I personally really like the lines, how the seat stay and this down tube kind of match with that angle, and then everything else comes off straight. It just gives it kind of a bold look. Again, looks are very personal, but I think this is probably 3 or 4 steps above the past look and is just very impressive. In watching the presentation from Levi and Robbie, the other thing that really stood out was Lectric really listens to people, like in the Facebook groups, customer service, the reviewers. They sit back and they read it all, and they try to do their best to incorporate that feedback and just make a better bike from the tires all the way down to the drivetrain. There are improvements all along the way. The tires, they've made them very quiet, still knobby on the outsides, but you've got kind of a more slick patch down the middle that they roll really well. So I'm excited to see how this does on the range test, because they also upgraded to a torque sensor. And the battery size is pretty impressive. So this one right here is the 750 watt rear hub motor with a 17.5 amp hour battery, all in that down tube. So this down tube's a little beefier, so it can fit that 17.5 amp hour battery, but they made it look really good and they kept the Lectric look. So better performance potential on the battery, on the motor. They do have a 500 watt option as well. The 500 watt option, haven't been able to ride yet, so stay tuned, I'll talk about that one. Other highlights for me on this first take, the drivetrain's improved, the brakes have improved. I'll go over that all in the specs, but overall, just my initial take riding this is it's a significant better ride than the past version of the XP. All right, so you can tell by my reaction on my first take videos that I really was surprised out of the gate with everything that Lectric has done on the bike. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. So first of all, to go over some basic specs, right? So it is a class 2/class 3 bike. So you can set this up however you kind of need to, depending on your local laws, but it does come shipped as a class 2, where you can throttle to 20, pedal to 20, and you can set it to class 3, where it will then pedal up to 28 miles per hour. Obviously it's the XP4, so it's a folding bike. That's what this is. And in the past, I've kind of called it more of a fat tire bike. They kind of slimmed up the tires just a little bit, so I'm going to call it a semi-fat tire. The color options, really cool what they've done here. There's 4 different options. You have a Tempest Gray, which is really like a really dark gray, almost a black. They have a blue color, they have a white color that's actually my personal favorite, and then you have what I think the crowd favorite is this really nice pine green. So we have these pine trees in the background, perfect spot for this bike. And given the Lectric XP really originally took off amongst kind of the RV crowd, I really like how they gave that a nod to where you can go and what you can do on the bike. Some other key specs to hit: the max payload on the bike is 330 pounds, and just you can tell from the frame design here, and you can also see it in the step through that I was riding at the south rim of the Grand Canyon. They have completely redesigned this frame from the ground up, and that is the part that really stood out to me the most. You know, it's just, I really like the look, the feel. The frame feels a little more powerful, a little more sturdy, and just better looking in general. My personal favorite is actually the step through. Again, you just saw in the previous first take video, but a lot of people still do like the high step. Kind of up to you on that. All right, so with the 2 different options, again, this is the high step, and then there's the step through. The high step has a 29-inch step through height, and the step through is 19.5, excuse me. So about a 10-inch difference, which again, I find a little bit easier to get off and on, but this is still very low for a high step bike. Next thing is the XP 3.0. It was listed to fit riders 4'10" to 6'4". I do not have official numbers from Lectric yet, but as you can see, this seat post goes down quite a bit here. You'll notice the XP4 750 version has a suspension seat post. You don't get that on the base model, and so you can't go down all the way there because of the suspension, but it's really low. So I think 4'10", 5 feet is fine on the low end. On the high end, what I found is that this new model, it measures about 1 inch less height than the previous version, and frankly, I don't know if the previous version really went to 6'4". I think this one fits really good if you're 6'2" and under and you want full leg extension. Now, most people when they're riding these don't actually get full leg extension. I don't either. I actually put it down an inch or two more. And so I do think you're fine if you're 6'4". Just note that, yeah, you're not gonna get that full proper cyclist leg extension on that. But it still is pretty comfortable and one of the better folding bikes because you also have the telescoping stem up front. Now, the other big difference that they made here is on it's your reach. So from here to the handlebars, where they actually shortened that reach by a good 1 to 2 inches and made it feel much more comfortable. In the previous version, I was kind of riding arms out a lot and it didn't feel as good. This one, what they did here, they call it a 0-degree stem, where basically if you take the line from the fork and draw it up through here, it's all on a straight line. You can still see it is canted backwards a little bit, but the previous model came up here and then was canted forward, I think about 12 degrees. And so that made you just reach a little farther, where now it's a little more tight, a little more compact, and just feels in general quite a lot better when you are riding. Okay, and then stepping back, they have 20-inch tires, and Lectric really put some thought into this. A lot of XP3 owners kind of went out and they would buy aftermarket tires from Specialized that are kind of their carless whisper tires that have a center strip that's smooth and then some knobs on the edge. And they had these tires designed specifically to try to replicate that. They're not as knobby on the sides as the Specialized, but they're smooth in the middle, and they do make riding very much quieter. Not as knobby as the previous version, but I still got good traction when I was off-road on kind of, dirt and things like that. So I think I really actually like the feel and the nimbleness that these tires give the bike, and just love how they did that. You also will see there's a rear rack. This is a rack that has 150-pound weight capacity. It's compatible with like the Thule child seat, and just a lot of, with that 150 pounds, you can do a lot more here and makes this bike very utilitarian. Also on the back here, I want to point out, they have something that I don't see on too many bikes in this price range, and that is turn signals. So you have a left turn signal and a right turn signal, and just increases the ability to utilize this as a commuter, which super cool what they've done back here. As you move forward on the bike, they do have some mounting points here behind the seat post, and that it's pretty tight there. I don't know if you can get a water bottle in there, but you could probably get, if you notice underneath the down tube, they have the bike lock there. You could put the bike lock in the back if you would like. You also have the top mounting points for a water bottle, and up front for the bike rack. So in general, very utility bike, really strong looks. And actually, before I forget, up at the front, they also have that really big 90 lumen headlight. That is an upgrade when you do the 750 watt version model. And the 90 lumens do make it so you can see at night, but it's more still to be seen. If you're really commuting at night, I would recommend getting something even brighter than that. But I do like seeing Lectric take steps forward, making that light bigger and brighter. All right, so let's dive into the heart and soul of the XP4, and it'll really show where the difference and why you're paying $12.99 instead of $9.99 versus just the base model XP4. So the 750 watt version comes with, no surprise, a 750 watt rear hub motor. It has a max wattage output of 1,310, and it has 85 Newton meters of torque. So that's 30 more Newton meters than the base model. The battery is 17.5 amp hours, and it's a 48 volt system. So, I mean, that's 840 watt hours, and Lectric claims up to 85 miles of range. Now, to be honest, we haven't had time yet for me to do a full max power and a min power range test. I have on max power and I got just around 30 miles, which, you know, a lot of times I like to see kind of like if it goes 30 on max, it might go 60 to 70 on min. I think that difference might be a little bigger. I don't know if I'll get a full 85 on the min test, but 30 miles on max with how peppy this is actually really good, because it really is kind of, when I take a step back and look at this whole system together, it is a very powerful system. Levi and Robbie are pretty competitive. Lectric wants to be the best. They want to provide the most bang for your buck. And after the XP 3.0 came out with their 500 watt motor, there was a couple competitors that came out speccing their folding bikes with 750 watt motors. And I know Levi and Robbie, they kind of felt like their 500 watt motor was close to those 750 watt motors. And so they really wanted to come back and just kind of knock it out of the park and be the most powerful folding e-bike that there is out there, at least among the main competitors. And I will say, like, they did a good job. So I do all the hill tests for Electric Bike Report. I've climbed that hill, I don't even know how many hundreds of times. And this, so far, the XP4 750 watt is the fastest folding fat tire bike that we've tested yet to date. And out of all the bikes that I've tested, it was in the top 7 to 8% again of all bikes. So this thing absolutely does rip uphill and feels very peppy on flats anywhere you're riding it. So they're definitely pushing back and saying our 750 watt motor is very powerful, and be interesting to see how the other companies respond. The other thing that I like that they did with this is they tried to reduce the cadence that you need to get full power. A lot of times on a torque sensor, you want a higher cadence to get kind of the motors like highest output. And so they tried to reduce that. They did that, I think, their claim is that they reduced the cadence needed by 28%. I don't know how they came up with the math, but they really didn't want you to have to ghost pedal to get up to full juice. And I think they did that, one with this big front chainring, and then some other with the programming of what the cadence needs to be with that torque sensor to just get you up to speed. The bike still feels very natural as you ride it. You know, between a cadence sensor where all you're doing is lightly turning the cranks and just going full speed, and a torque sensor on like a road bike where you're really pushing down and putting in the watts to get up to speed. This one's definitely more towards the casual side. It's not a feel of, I want to kill myself when I go up a hill. You do have to push down a little bit, but in general, it just feels really relaxed and easy. If you're someone who hasn't ridden a bike in a long time, if you're someone with knee issues like me after I'm kneeling down on a review, this is an easy bike to pedal around. And I do think in terms of the XP 750 versus the 500 watt, if you're a larger rider, if you're someone that really does have a lot of really steep hills to climb or just like going fast, that $299 upgrade to get to this version is probably worth it. And Lectric has just, again, they've done a really good job on the entire electrical system of this bike. The last thing that I want to point out that I really like is, because this has such a big battery, I love how they gave a 5 amp fast charger. So at 5 amps an hour that they can push through a 17.5 amp hour battery, you can charge the battery from 0 to full in just about 3.5 hours. I've done that several times now, and it works fantastically well. And I really like seeing brands add those faster chargers just to make it easier. So, you know, there's sometimes that I kind of forget to charge it, and so you can throw it on for even an hour and get a really good amount of juice out of it. Okay, so now let's dive into some of the other components on the XP4. And for the most part, all of these are included on both versions. I'll point out the ones that are just solely upgraded on this version. But the first big upgrade that they did is they went with the Shimano Altus 8-speed drivetrain. So it's 11x32 freewheel with a 56 tooth front chainring. Like I said, it's a big front chainring. The next thing that they upgraded were the brakes. On these folding bikes, you're folding them, you're unfolding them, you're putting it in a car or in an RV or whatever, and the brake rotors can get kind of dinged around a bit. And so I like how they went to a really beefy rotor. So it's a 180 mil rotor front and back, and it's 2.3 millimeters thick. So they really increased that thickness on the rotors, which does improve the stopping power. But in addition, it makes it harder to bend the rotor. And so you should have a little bit less maintenance, or just kind of that where it drives you nuts, where it's just rubbing and dinging kind of while you're riding. So love the fact that they did that, especially at this price range. Other things, this version does have, like I mentioned, the suspension seat post. It's kind of the saddle's the same as on a lot of electric bikes. I like them. I am not particular with my saddles, but I have found it to be very comfortable for me. If it's not comfortable for you, you can always swap that out. And then up front, the other thing that Lectric has is a 50 mil front suspension. The stanchions are 30 mil thick. And so that's probably the only area that I might be able to say Lectric didn't blow my socks off. It's kind of what I would expect on a bike like this, so I can't really ding it for it. But it's not the most stiff front suspension fork there is. There is a lockout, and there is some load adjustment that you can do. It's not a ton, but obviously this bike isn't meant to take off a 4-foot drop or anything like that. So it's definitely adequate for what it is. 50 mil of travel is more than enough for what you're doing. And frankly, I honestly don't think that they could put a better fork on there and keep this price. I mean, that's the same fork on the base model. So $1,000 e-bike, you just can't do that. Moving on to the cockpit now. So the handlebars, they're 660 mil wide with a little bit of swept backness. I'd say maybe 5 to 7 degrees there. So for the most part, they're pretty straight on the handlebars. Other things that I like, the grips, it's a rubber grip and they do lock. So they're not gonna, a lot of times, I mean, it's hot here. And so in the summer, when we're riding, sometimes that'll just twist a lot on you. These are locking, so they're not gonna twist. Not something I usually see in this price range. Next that you'll notice on the right hand here is the Shimano rapid fire shifters. So this is where my big beef with Shimano Tourney is. It shifts fine, it's okay, but that's where, like the old XP3, it's above the handlebar shifters. These are now under the handlebar rapid fire shifters, and just make it really easy to shift, and kind of why I think Shimano Tourney just needs to die a slow death. Like I'm not a fan. I'm much more a fan when you get into Alta Cesara, which is what they've done and improved that greatly. The next thing that they really improved is on the brake levers. So you'll notice on these, they're made by Star Union, but they have a 602 on the reservoir. And 602 is actually the Arizona zip code for where Lectric is based out of. And kind of a cool story is Star Union reached out to Lectric because they wanted to design these brake levers with them. Levi flew to China. When he gets there, there's this massive billboard basically welcoming Levi to China from Star Union. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. They sell a ton of bikes. Star Union wants their business. And so they kind of custom did the brake levers and the system with Lectric, where the pull and the feel on these really does feel better than I think any other bike in the $1,000 price range that I've tested. Like, it does feel really nice. And I'm actually kind of curious, in the spec sheet that I got sent over, Lectric just said a 602 brake set. And I'm almost wondering if they're going to try to brand these as kind of their joint brand with Star Union. But in general, really like the feel of the levers. Really good stopping power, especially when you pair that with those extra big rotors in the back. You'll notice on this bike, there's also a bell. That does not come standard. Kind of a gripe with me. I mean, the bell can't cost a ton, so just throw it in. I mean, tons of people are riding these on trails everywhere. It's really nice and respectful just to have a bell. So it doesn't come standard, just add it, order it, unless you have your own. That is one, again, nitpicky area that I'd like to see Lectric do a little bit more on the cockpit. But just in general, I really do like the cockpit. Oh, before I forget, because they went to the rapid thumb shifters, they had to switch, instead of a right kind of twist throttle. It's a throttle, it's an under the thumb, under the handlebar throttle here with your left finger. And the engagement on this is actually very comfortable. The argument for the twist throttle is that you can just kind of throttle around, you never have to pedal and it doesn't tire your thumb out. This one, I'm more of a pedaler than a throttler, but I was able to throttle for several miles and I was totally fine. So it's, again, kind of like the rest of the cockpit. It just feels like it's a half step or a step above what I normally see in kind of those very inexpensive bikes that you generally find kind of on Amazon, etc. And just a very well done cockpit in general from Lectric. And then to round that out, if you come up to the front and look at the wiring. So the wiring on this, there's a lot going on. You know, you've got the display, you've got all the cables, you know, turn lights, all of those things. I do like how they've done this. It is external, and so a mechanic is going to be very happy because it's easy to work on. It does give you more wiring, but there's no way to really wire it through the top tube on a folding bike. That's just a recipe for a disaster. I have had a couple folding bikes that tried to do that, and I've actually clamped down and snapped a couple of those wires, even though I knew it was going to happen. So it is fairly clean, runs alongside the bottom of that top tube, and just again rounds out that cockpit and gives it a good feel, a good clean look. Definitely want to keep the kind of the wiring wrap that they have, and just in general, just really good job all the way around the cockpit from Lectric. Okay, so the display that they have done is something that I've been wanting Lectric to do for a long time. No, they still don't have an app. That's an ask that I keep asking them, but I don't know if they're close to doing that. However, they did significantly upgrade the display. So I'm gonna walk you through that. So first of all, this is the first screen. It shows your miles per hour and it shows you what assist level you're at. So it's off right now. There's eco, kind of neat little thing. You can go minus or plus. If you'll notice when I'm in off, it shows you can't go any lower. When I go to eco, there's tour, sport, sport plus, and turbo. And you notice that plus went away because you can't go any higher than turbo. Also in the top right, you'll notice this says 70%. So the only complaint I have on this is it's not a true percentage readout. It actually gives it in 10% increments on that. Just so you know, so it's not going to say 70, then 68, then 67. It's going to go from 70 to 60 to 50 to 40, 30, 20, etc., and go down. Now, as you scroll through, you just hit the power button. It takes you to the next screen. So the next screen, again, it shows you your assist level there, your miles per hour, your battery readout. It also has your cadence, so that's how fast you're turning the pedals, your total trip time, the total trip distance, and the odometer. So this one, so far, we put 77 miles on it. The next screen, a couple really cool things here. First of all, input power in watts. So that is what you are putting into the pedals using that torque sensor. Now, this is not as, it's not like down to the 1% accuracy like on a Garmin power meter pedals, but Garmin power meter pedals over $1,000 a set. So that's not what to expect. I don't know what percentage accurate it is, but it is kind of cool to see. You can be on this screen and see how much power you're putting in versus how much the motor is kicking out in terms of watts. It also shows the amps and the voltage, and that's your three main screens that you have on here. Now, next, if you want to get into the further settings, oh, actually, before I do that, let me show you. You also, on the left side, you have your turn signals. So you hit left and you'll see it comes up, the turn signal. If you hit left again, it turns it off. Right, comes up, blinks, turns it off, okay? Next, to get into the advanced settings, which Lectric is kind of known, you have to search and figure out what number and all of those things, and it's really archaic. That's changed. So if you hold positive and minus, it's more of a easy menu, right? So I'll walk you through that. So this is screen brightness. You hit the power button, takes you in. You can choose 1, 2, or 3. I always choose 3. So sunny here a lot of times. Sleep, so you can set how many minutes before the bike goes to sleep. Distance units, so that's miles or kilometers. Tire size, 22 inches. Leave this unless you change the tires. Otherwise, it's going to mess up a lot of the settings. The bike classification, so you can set it as a class 1. You can set it as a class 2, class 3, Or now, thanks to California's e-bike laws, California Class 3, which is kind of nice because you come in, set it, and it'll do that for you. Where we are, Class 3, so I'll leave it at Class 3. Next, assistance level. There's a standard torque multiplier and an increased torque multiplier. The increased multiplier is just going to give you a little more pep. It's a subtle difference, but you can play around with it and see which one you prefer. Next, you have 3 different settings for the throttle assist and the toggle. So PAS active, so that's your pedal assist is active, but your throttle's not active. Then you have pedal assist inactive and throttle only, which I would never use personally. And then pedal assist active and throttle active, which is where I typically use the bike. Next setting, you have your throttle output. So you can set this up to where your throttle output is limited based on your assist level. So if you're an eco, the throttle will only take you up to a slower speed versus taking it all the way to turbo. This is something I'd recommend if you're newer to the bike and you're a little bit worried that you put on the throttle and it's just gonna shoot you forward. For me, I personally like the full throttle output in all PS levels, but again, it depends on you. Next is throttle 0 start. What that means, you can choose from a throttle being active from standstill, so you don't have to pedal to have the throttle work. But again, if that makes you a little nervous, you can switch it to throttle only active when you're already moving and already pedaling. There's a walk mode, so you can turn that off, or you can have it set to 3 miles per hour or 3.7 miles per hour. The light operation, so your lights are, in this setting, lights are off until manually turned on. I actually prefer this one. So lights flash when bike is on, when manually turned on, flashing stops. So you see now it shows a little flashing light up at the top. Odometer reset, if you want to reset it, you hold it for 5 seconds. I'm not going to do that now. And that is the screen of the Lectric XP. And again, I do think that that is a nice upgrade. You don't have to memorize what setting 3 or 13 or 16 are. And it's just really nice and easy for you to go in and change that however you would like. So this is a folding bike. So I'm going to show you what I have found to be the easiest way to fold this. Again, so you got the drivetrain side on the other side of you. You want to put the wheel, or not the wheel, the pedals like this. So that on the drivetrain side, you want the pedal going to the back. Now I first start with the middle. I have the kickstand down for now. I'm going to unlock this, and there's a handle here, and I like to grab the stem like that. And then as I go forward, I actually kick the kickstand back and set it down. So it has a nice little bar that it can rest down here. Doesn't mess up the chainring or anything. And if you notice, because I set the pedals that way, it just rests here very nicely. Next, all I have to do, lift up this latch, and this folds down. Then I can take out the seat post if I need to, or I can push it down. I'll just leave it down for now, but you can take that all out if you want. And then one really cool thing the Lectric did is the pedals are easily removed, because you can see the width that this is required to have with the pedals. So if you just pull out here, the pedal pops right off. Super easy, super cool. These are, I mean, really good quality aluminum pedals that have good grip. They were actually, again, custom made for Lectric. Don't usually see that at this price range. And then to put them back in, just pull that out again all the way, and it just slides right in, and you're locked and you're ready to go. So when I'm unfolding it, putting it into a car or something like that, just pull those out. Works really well. As far as lifting goes, yes, I can lift it on my own. I mean, you're talking 70 pounds, and there's not a strap to hold it together. And so I would love to see them find a way to really just lock it down and make it easier for someone to lift. But it's also pretty easy for a 2-person. So again, if you don't feel comfortable lifting 70-ish pounds, then you're gonna wanna grab somebody to lift it. The only other complaint I have is when you're folding it, and you'll probably hear it here, there's a contact point in the middle here where you can get a little bit of rubbing. So if you're concerned about that, you might wanna get something protective just on that point right there. But that's, again, this folds really easily. Then when you get it out of the car, let me show you how to do it. So come behind it again, right? and I like to lift it up a little bit here. So first, I'm gonna lift that and lock that into place. Then I'm gonna grab, so same place as when I unfolded it, right? So grab that there and the handle there and lift it forward. Put the kickstand down. Make sure that's locked and that's locked. And then you are good to go. Ride your bike. All right, most fun part of the review, ride quality. So we're gonna go take a ride on the XP3.0. I'm gonna walk you through as best as I can what it feels like to ride the bike. Lectric being a direct-to-consumer company, you know, we're hoping to help as many of you just get a really good feel for what the bike's like. So let's jump in and go for a ride. Okay, so first up, if you look at the screen, this is kind of the normal setup. You've got Eco, Tour, Sport, Sport Plus, and Turbo. I'm gonna kind of go down to Eco, and then I'm gonna show the second. So the second screen, it gives you your cadence, your trip time, your trip distance, and your odometer. Third screen is that input power, motor power, amps, voltage. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start out with kind of a speed test here. And I'm going to start at Eco. I'm going to try to keep my input power kind of about the same and just, again, fairly lightish. So I will note the input power, the sensor they have is nothing like a Garmin, you know, the power meter pedals that are over $1,000. So I don't know how accurate it is. It's definitely not 1%, but it'll give us a good relative idea here. So I'm on Eco, about 65. That's what my cadence is. Cadence is about 53-ish, and about 60, going about 13 miles per hour. I will note, you can pedal this, I think I've got it about 25 miles per hour on Eco, but it takes a little bit more. So now we're gonna kick it up to Tour. So again, keeping those watts. My input, if you notice, it dropped a little bit. Right about 43, 42. I'm in 6th gear. It's about 65 RPM cadence, which I like. If you don't like that, you can shift up a little bit to 7th. It's gonna be dropped to about 54. My wattage drops to about 40. I'm going about 16 miles per hour. Let's move up to Sport. You'll notice pick up in speed, wattage, my input. It feels a little lighter. About 42, 43, kind of 35s. Let's go to my cadence here. So we get about 66. This feels pretty good to me, but I think a lot of people might jump it up to 8th, where you see my cadence drop, 19 miles per hour, and watch right around that 40-ish level here. So now, let's kick it up one more to Sport Plus. Definitely an increase in the, you know, in the speed. Now going about 21. My input power again varies a little bit with the terrain, but I feel like I'm pushing about the same as I was before. Cadence kind of low 60s, mid 60s. I'm in 8th gear, so I can't shift. Let's go back. Sorry, keep hitting the button one too many times. Now we're going to go into Turbo. And this is where the bike really just kind of takes off. I'm in 8th gear, 25 really easy. You see my watts that I'm putting down, 25, 30. I need to almost try to put a little bit more. My cadence here, see my cadence increases to about 79, 80. So I can also kind of just slow down, but if I do slow down my cadence, then I'm kind of not getting any engagement there, even with that really large front chainring and the 11x32, you know, free wheel in the back. So definitely feels very punchy. And this is class 3 on, you know, kind of this speed test here. And we'll kind of, let me get it past here so I don't blow by too fast, and we'll do a 0 to 60 type test. Okay, so now we're going back And I'm gonna see if before that bridge, if I can get up to 28 miles per hour. So I'm in turbo, 8th gear starting out, nice kick. Let's see how fast we can get it up here. So not quite to the bridge. That was not a very long distance. The 750 watt motor feels very peppy. And I think, so if you're wanting just to kind of soft pedal along, just kind of, I could see using turbo, but I actually think you might end up using kind of Sport Plus a little bit more. And definitely on a trail like this, you know, you're gonna be down in Sport Plus, probably lower to Class 2. I just did that Class 3 segment really quick so you can see what it's like. So impressions of the motor, again, just nice and peppy. I'll take it up a hill here in a minute so you can see what that feels like. Now the drivetrain, the shifting on this has been really good. So it's the 8-speed Shimano Altus. I'm in 8th gear right now. Let's go down to Eco. So I can start dropping some gears. The shifting's crisp and smooth. Now obviously if you don't get that dialed in extremely well, then you know, you'll have to work on that side of things. You'll notice now down in 3rd, kind of ghost pedaling a little bit. You're not going to use 3rd gear much unless you're really starting to climb a hill. So I've noticed again it's flat here. 3rd, I'm feeling a little bit. You see my cadence is 74, 75. Once you really get up above that, it's where it starts to feel like it ghost pedals. And so I think 4th gear on Eco for someone my size, about 185 pounds. You know, just a really nice casual spin right there. But biggest thing that I like probably about the drivetrain, again, those rapid fire shifters, really nice. The throttle also really nice. I like it being moved over here to thumb throttle. I know a lot of people do like twist throttles. I'm just generally a fan of the thumb for myself. Hello. And so speaking of throttle, let's do a throttle test now. So this is, I'm gonna pull over really quick and I'm gonna set this up. See if I can show you as I do it. I'm gonna set this up to where the throttle speed changes based on PS level. So there it is. And so now I'm in Eco, so let's see how fast this goes. We'll do kind of a throttle speed test now. And so if you're someone kind of newer to e-bikes and you're a little bit worried about the throttle taking off, this is the setting that I'd recommend you be in here. And so right now, right at 7-8 miles per hour on throttle, let's go to the motor power, kicking out 212 watts. Okay, let's kick this up to Tor. Yeah, so we see the motor power increase to 430 watts. That's kicking up, going to 13 miles per hour, 14. Let's go to Sport now, 640 watts, 17 miles per hour. You also see the amps and the volts there, which is nice. Sport Plus now, going to 20. I'm not going to get any more speed here because I'm already at 20 miles per hour. Because it does obviously stop at 20. So really you can kind of just from, it was about Tor almost gets you to 20. For me, again, your weight's going to vary here. And then Sport is about where you get up to 20 on the throttle. But it is nice that you can set that up if you want to where the throttle can have different outputs based on your assist level. If you don't like it, just toggle that switch over. You got full throttle the whole time. Okay, so now I'm going to do something a little bit different because, you know, because this is a torque sensor and is one of the bigger upgrades, I think, to e-bikes in general, is how well they pedal now versus, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. I'm going to show you, I've been trying to find a way to describe it because this sensor is definitely like between a cadence and a torque sensor, right? A cadence sensor, you just kind of turn the cranks, and as long as you have a good cadence, then you're just going to be going almost full speed, right? They can limit the amps that go on each assist level and kind of change that up. But a torque sensor is where it really multiplies what you're putting into the pedals, the wattage that you are putting in. And so in theory, you know, I could get up to 20 miles per hour on Eco on this bike, I don't think, well, I've already done it. I struggled. I think some other people, my daughter probably could, some other Nike riders could. But I'm just going to show you kind of what it takes to get it up, you know, above that, you know, 11, 12 miles per hour that I was getting on Eco before, and just kind of see at each assist level, like how fast we can go and what my input power needs to go to reach that. So let's go on Eco first, and let's see where we can get. So I'm gonna stay seated. So I'm about 150 watt input, 18, 19 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour, 170, 214, 24 miles per hour, 25. Whew. I might have been able to push it a little more there. Whew. Yeah, you want to get a workout, kick this in Eco and go. So now we're going to do Tour. So kind of the same type of thing. So I'm at 18 miles per hour, 100 watt input for me, 23, 140 watts, 26, 125 watts, 27. Okay, so able to get there in Tour. You can tell from my breathing, but yeah, it's definitely multiplying what I'm putting in, and has feel of a natural bike. I think it's really impressive. So we're gonna go back now, kick it to Sport, do the same. Feels a bit easier here to get it up to 28. So yeah, about 130 watts to get it to 28 on Sport. Sport Plus. So it's about 75 to 100 watts. And then Turbo, I can almost soft pedal it basically and get it all the way up, 28 miles per hour. Even though I'm tired, I'm winded, and you know, instead it was like 30, 40 watts of my input power. So, you know, I would say this torque sensor, I mean, it's their 4th version, and it's definitely more dialed in, more natural than past versions. And for the price on this bike, I know I've said that a lot, but really I kind of keep coming back and have to remind myself that, you know, it's $12.99 with all the tariffs, with all the challenges that we're facing. So really cool that they've done that. And so if you're someone that wants more of a workout, definitely just turn down the assist level and go. If you're someone that wants, you know, just a soft pedal, Sport Plus, Turbo, and I mean, I'm just really soft pedaling right here. Hello. So super cool on that. So now I'm gonna go find a hill and show you how this thing climbs, because that hill's not long enough. Okay, so we're coming up on a hill here as I turn right. So I'm gonna kick it into Turbo, and I'm just gonna let you see how this actually, let's turn left first, and then we'll come all the way up this hill. It is a pretty steep hill. You know, as I did the hill test for Electric Bike Report, I can tell you this thing was the fastest 750 watt, most powerful 750 watt motor we've had on a hill. So I'm in 8th gear. I'm soft pedaling, says I'm putting in 35 watts of power. You know, I'm already up over 20 miles per hour up this hill. Continue to soft pedal, and it really just charges up it. So if you are someone that is wanting a bike to soft pedal up a hill and just speed and have the most power, I'd recommend the 750 watt version. That's especially true, I would say, if you're over 200 pounds, 220 plus. That extra wattage, the extra, you know, 85 newton meters of torque is really going to help on the hill climb. You know, capability of it is just kind of a big deal. I personally like the 750 watt just because I like a little more speed and it's still controlled, but you absolutely be fine on the 500 watt. It's very similar to the older 500 watt version, which is great. And then kind of the last thing is just the bike handling. Sorry for how dark it is under the bridge, but hopefully get a pretty cool view of the river here. Because I would say they really improved the overall handling by bringing that reach in a couple inches where my arms are not straight out, and I really feel it as when I'm turning here. You know, I'm just able to just ride it more like a regular bike. Very upright, comfortable position, and really does just feel good. So off-road now, take you off there and we'll see kind of how that does. The tires, they're still 20x3, so you still have good volume there to support you. They went with those Whisper Quiet, which I mean they really are quiet tires. You lost a little bit of the knobby, so I'd say these ones are a little bit less grippy on this kind of, this kind of path type, but it's still fine. Like I haven't had any issues. I ride a lot of mountain bike type stuff, so I'm pretty comfortable on this. But I would say one thing you could do if you are a little bit worried is you could air down the tire just a little bit more. That's what I generally recommend anyways for off-road. Not too far where you're gonna ding up a rim, but if you air it down just a little bit, then you do get kind of a better overall response. And so to wrap this up, I think just in general, the overall ride quality of the bike, it got stiffer, the geometry of the frame just got better, so it's more comfortable to ride. It still handles off-road just well. And I guess the last thing that I forgot to bring up actually is the braking power. I've been incredibly impressed with this. I'll show you here. I'll brake kind of even on this downhill. Just incredibly controlled on the braking. The levers of these, Star Union 602, throw out that they got their own zip code branded on these things. It is such a better feel with that lever pull than I normally get at this price range. And then by going to the 2.3 thick rotors, 2.3 by 180, just a very robust rotor system where you really can slam on that brake, come to a good controlled stop, and just another big upgrade all the way around that improves the ride quality of the bike. And just a ton of things to like about the XP4 750 watt. Yeah, if there's anything I left out and kind of how it feels riding, drop it in the comments. But with that, let's take it back and wrap up this review. All right, guys, so let's take a look at the Lectric XP4 750 from more of an ownership maintenance standpoint or build quality standpoint. The things you should be aware about as far as just ensuring the longevity of the bike and getting it serviced, these are some things you should just keep an eye out for. So I'm going to start off with the things I like that they did in this model, because there's a lot of things I do like, and then I'm going to touch on a few things that I definitely think should use some attention. And if you get the bike and you have some of these before they're addressed at the factory, I would say definitely just watch this, take some notes, and apply it to your bike. So first things first, they did a new full frame redesign. It's just stiffer, it's more responsive, it's got a more modern look, just softer lines, it's not as boxy as it used to be. So aside from just good looks, what's more important is the new frame design, the way it's engineered. It's just stiffer and more responsive and has a better ride quality to it. Another thing, pretty small issue, but I do have to mention it. You guys know my love affair with plastic fenders. They just can take a beating, they don't bend, they don't rattle, they don't rust. They're probably lighter and I would guess cheaper, but I don't really know. Either way, I always prefer plastic fenders, so that was a good move. One big change they did into the overall design of this is previous folding bikes have wires that go through this hinge point. So when you fold the bike, you usually have some exposed wires that maybe have some protective housing around them, but nonetheless, those wires are in the folding pinch point of the hinge. And if you're not careful, many times you can damage and pinch those wires when you're folding it if you don't get them right out of the way before the hinge closes. So what Lectric did, it was really smart for a couple reasons. One is they ran it underneath the frame
and all the way back to its final destination, whether it's going to the derailleur or the brakes, whatever those cables are going to. But that does a few things. One is it keeps it out of this pinch point and out of ever, you don't need to worry about when you fold this bike, it'll just be out of the way already, which is a huge starting point. But beyond that, that keeps every wire from its starting point all the way along its routing point to its final destination easy to access. So I can take these little protective wire covers off, I can take them all the way off, and then I can just pull whichever wire needs to be serviced on or replaced or repaired over time, and I don't have to worry about fishing them out of a frame or dealing with all of that nonsense. Everything is really easy to work on and accessible, and it's just going to keep labor costs down if you go to a bike shop, but more importantly, it's just going to protect all these internal cables that we usually see. They're not going to be getting pinched in this spot. So kind of a long-winded way of saying really smart decision there. Another thing is they kind of bumped up the spec on all of the components. So starting back in the drivetrain, we have Shimano Altus, which was previously the Shimano Tourney. If you're not familiar, all the drivetrain and group set manufacturers have tiers or levels, starting with the most basic entry level and then working your way up to pro level stuff. So what we've done is we've just stepped up a level on that tier system, going from Shimano Tourney to Altus. And then they also partnered with Star Union for their hydraulic disc brakes. As you can see, they have a little collab here. It says 602. That's actually the area code where Lectric is based out of in Arizona. And so these Star Union brakes not only feel really good, they have nice modulation. Frankly, they punch above their weight class and how they perform. But beyond that, between the drivetrain, all your hydraulic disc brakes, your shifter levers, cables, those things are all going to be easily serviceable, replaceable, upgradable parts that your local bike shop or you could do yourself. So just no proprietary or obscure stuff. It's all name brand components that can easily be serviced by any shop you take your bike to, which is always a good sign. So some things that I would suggest they are improved, and I'll start back here with one of the more obvious ones to me, and that is the chain design here, or the design of the frame, has this nice thick tube back here, which I think looks great and adds to the rigidness and stability. No ding there, but what happens is you can hear that chain tapping the arm there. Now they did add one small piece of protective film, but it's only about that big, and I can see chain slap and grease for about that much of the derailleur, just depending on where it hits in there. And so I would definitely say if you own this bike and you get it and that's not a longer piece by the time you get it, just to go onto Amazon, look for ride wrap or bike frame protectant film, and I would just add a strip here before it gets greasy and things like that, so it bonds nicely, and then that will just protect this area, because if this chain continues to slap against metal, at first it's just going to dull the paint, then it will ultimately start to just wear away at the paint, and ultimately you'll get to the raw metal underneath. And over time, you don't want to do that to your bike frame. You want it to stay protected from the basic usage like this. So a thin, cheap piece of protective film will go a really long way in protecting your frame here. And the other note on that is going to be quite similar, actually. So when you fold this bike, you'll see some points already have these little protective film, little rubber spots that protect impacts when metal touches metal, right? Well, one spot that they didn't add one, and we're already getting raw metal, is going to be back here on the back side of this frame. When the frame turns into itself and closes, there's no protective film on one spot of the frame. We'll show it on camera here if you can't see it, but it's rubbing raw from the front fender mount bolt, and the rear axle bolt is also rubbing on the fork stanchion. So both of those two spots, when the bike folds, are kind of just rubbing against each other. And if you don't protect that area with some of these rubber stoppers or little pads that kind of just handle those impact points, you'll ultimately just wear away your paint, and that would just be something that could easily be avoided with just a couple rubber stoppers in the right place. But yeah, there wasn't a lot to complain about with this bike. A lot of really cool upgrades done to it, and frankly, for the dollar value and everything you're getting, it's a really just standout job that Lectric did with the XP4.
All right, so that is the Lectric XP4 750 watt edition. And just kind of in general, and my bottom line thoughts is, like, the inner, like, more classic cyclist in me doesn't want to like this bike as much as I do. I've never been a huge fan of kind of the folding fat tire bikes. Again, I'm kind of more traditional cyclist in me kind of coming out there, but there's a big reason why so many people like the bike. And I think Lectric just took a whole 2 steps above with everything that they have done here. I really personally like the look of the bike. I think they've improved the components from the front to the rear. Every single thing on this bike has been improved. And you can tell when we watched Levi and Robbie's presentation, they hit on a point several times that they listened to the Facebook groups and their complaints. They listened to the reviewers and their complaints. They listened to their product team. But it is really, all these improvements were really driven by you. You know, if you're someone that ends up buying this bike, then there's things that you think Lectric can improve, go out there, Facebook, like call their customer service, because they are listening. And I think I see that in this model. And that really does make me happy. And I want to give them a lot of kudos for doing so, because the XP series, you know, $1,000 e-bike, this one's $1,299. Like, there's a lot of components on here that I never would have expected to see at that price range several years ago. In fact, when Rad was originally coming out with the Rad Mission way long ago, their goal was to make a sub $1,000 e-bike. And even when they launched the Mission, it was above $1,000. So what Lectric has done here, when you put in perspective with the turn signals, with the hydraulic disc brakes, with extra thick rotors, with really solid design, 17.5 amp hour battery, 750 watt motor, really cool display, programming. It's pretty impressive what they've done. And if you are someone that is looking for a bike that can go in your RV, put in the back of your truck, or heck, even your Honda Civic, and just kind of go adventure and take this to places that you normally wouldn't go, this is one of the top recommendations that I'll have for you so far. With that being said, if there's anything that I've left out, definitely put those questions down in the comments. We're going to be doing further testing on this and try to answer any questions that you have, because I know it's going to be a pretty popular bike. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please like and subscribe. Me and Mike are doing kind of a weekly podcast that we're going to try to deep dive and answer some of the questions that you guys have. We have a lot of more reviews coming out and some other really cool educational material. And so with that being said, I'm Justin with Electric Bike Review, and I hope to see you out on the trail soon.